Good evening and welcome to our not back to school week. So today, this evening, we are going to be doing a webinar all about welcome to home ed. So if this is your very first week of home edding, or you've started just before the summer, or you've not been doing it long, or you've been doing it a while but you've just come along for some moral support, then do let us know in the chat. Today is the first of 3 webinars where we're going to be going through. So today, welcoming you to home ed, and going through a little bit about kind of how you might approach home ed. And then on Wednesday, we're going to look at how to get the best out of your Twinkl subscription. And then on Friday, we have our relax and rejuvenate. So hello to Emma, who's brand new, and the first one off with the chat. Now, the first thing to say is do please ask questions as we go, because this is very much for you. We're here, Twinkl are here for you to to help you, to hold your hand on your home ed journey. In the chat, we have Sam, who is the segment manager for Twinkl Home Ed. So there's actually 2 of us here today. So she's also there to be signposting you to lots of helpful places, and also there as well to help you. So Natalie, first time doing home ed, nervous, excited, overwhelmed, all the feelings. Hannah is brand new, starting this week with her almost 5-year-old. And Anna, not new, but needs some motivation. So thank you for sharing in the chat. And do ask questions as we go, and I will either pick them up at the end or as we go along. And yeah, all of the emotions. And you know what? Those emotions, I think, never ever change. You always have the wobbles of, are you doing enough? Is it the right thing? And you know, you have those times where everything clicks and you feel like everything's awesome, and then you have other days where you think, what on earth am I doing, and what on earth are we doing? So I think that roller coaster is very much normal. And as I said, Twinkl hopefully are here to hold your hand. Hi to Emma, and Rachel, who's also new to home ed as well. So the first thing I'm going to say is, who am I? So if you've never met me before, my name is Chrissy, and I work alongside Kirsty, and we are the video content creators. So anything you see in video form is done by me and Kirsty, who, if you were here with us this morning at 8 o'clock, where we did a whistle-stop tour of what's going on in the next few weeks, you would have met Kirsty as well. But the very first thing I wanted to say is we are a home ed team. We have Sam, as I said, in the chat, who is the segment manager. But we have a dedicated team, and lots of people often don't think about that. So obviously Twinkl started with John and Susie Seaton, and they were primary school. So Susie was a primary school teacher, and she was on a Sunday night thinking about what to plan for her class, and Twinkl grew out of that. So obviously we know that Twinkl grew out of being a site to help teachers, but actually our motto is we help those who teach, and that is also home educators. And so the thing that often lots of people don't know is that we are a dedicated team, and we write things for the home ed, for you guys, for the home ed market. So you have me and Kirsty, but also we have writers that write all our lovely resources. We have Lizzie, who I'm sure you've also met, who is over doing social media and helping you out with, like, what Lizzie doesn't know about what's out there on Twinkl isn't worth knowing. We have illustrators and editors and a designer. And so, as I said, lots of the team home educate. So a lot of our team home educate. And so we know exactly what it's like to be in your shoes. So that's the first thing, to say that we are a dedicated team that's here to help. And I think that was a really important thing to start with. So what are the rules around home ed? So if you're sort of thinking about home educating, and you're not kind of sure what the rules are around home ed, well, in England, if you want to withdraw your children from school, you need to submit a deregistration letter. Or if your child was due to take up a place in reception this September, then you need to reject that school place. And so that's the first thing to say. Children in SEN schools do require consent from the LA to deregister. In Wales, it's like parents withdrawing children from school need to submit a deregistration letter or reject a school place. And it's very, very similar rules to England. In Scotland, you do need LEA consent to withdraw your children from school, but you don't need consent to home educate. And in Northern Ireland, pupil names removed from SEN and mainstream schools on demand. So in Northern Ireland, you don't need specific permission if you have a child in an SEN school. So that's the first thing to say. If you kind of have got there and your child is still registered at a school or has a school place, you must obviously submit that deregistration letter. There are lots of examples online of what you need to write, and schools do need to accept that deregistration. So they can't you're not required to go to any sort of meeting to chat about it. Schools do have to act on that deregistration letter. And always, I would say, if you're going to email it or send it via post, get proof that, like a proof of postage, or that you have, one of the sort of things on your email where you get sort of proof that it's been sent, a receipt. I think they're called receipts, are they not, on emails? So lots of you have started off home educating for the very first time. And so the first thing we're going to think about is which of these do you legally have to provide. So you have your young people at home. Which of these do you legally have to provide? So I'm going to show you lots of different things, and I want you to work out which ones of these you legally have to provide for your young people at home. So the first thing is, do you think that you have to have teaching qualifications, or does your young person have to be taught by somebody who has teaching qualifications? Do you think that's a legal requirement, or do you not? The next one is, do you have to provide a dedicated place within your home for your young person to learn and for you to teach in? Is that a legal requirement? Do you have to provide a suitable education, which is actually quite wide open with regards to what you would deem to be suitable, but do you have to provide an education that is suitable? Do you have to provide, this is a big one that we often hear about, socialisation, school type socialisation, where children at school, they go out to break or lunch and they socialise. Do you have to provide similar school type socialisation if you home educate? Do you have to assess the progress of your young person, and do you have to set targets for their future progression? Do you have to make sure that you're providing a broad and balanced curriculum? Do you have to mark your young person's work and provide comments? Do you have to provide the opportunity for your child to gain qualifications? Is that a legal requirement? Do you have to teach from the curriculum of the country you reside in? So, for example, if you're in England, it's the national curriculum. Do you have to teach that curriculum if you choose to home ed your young person? Do you need to write down your lesson plans? We were talking a lot about planning this morning, about whether we love or loathe it. Do you have to write lesson plans for your young person? And do you have to ensure that your child is making age expected progress? So if you have had a young person in school and you have had a school report, you often have your child marked, if you will, against what is expected of the age, and you will be told that your child is either meeting age expected progress or they're not meeting age expected progress. Do you have to ensure that you're trying to make your child meet age expected progress? So I'm going to give you a few moments to have a chat if there's a few of you at home watching, or for you to have a little think of which of these you legally have to provide. Let me know in the chat what your thoughts are, because it's really important from the get-go for you to know which of these you do legally have to provide your young person. So we've got Jen in the chat who's been home educating for a year and a bit, and her young people were deregistered on mental health grounds, which are not being met due to being neurodivergent. That is something that we often, hear. So both my children are neurodivergent, and school. I mean, first of all, they never went to school. I'll talk a little bit about our journey a bit later, but my eldest decided to try school, and it very much felt like sort of, that analogy of ramming a round peg into a square hole. So Helen says, just one, a suitable education. So does everyone agree with Helen? Is that the only thing that you legally have to provide, a suitable education for your young person? Or do you think there's other things on that list that you do have to provide? So is Helen right? Are we in agreement with Helen? So Mandy says she's been home editing for a while but needs a reboot as struggling with secondary. Absolutely. I think sometimes when you get to secondary level, you feel a little bit more, feels a bit more serious maybe. Right, so, formal lessons, that was the other one. So you absolutely are right. The only one that you have to legally provide is a suitable education. You don't have to assess. You don't have to provide targets. You don't have to write lesson plans. You don't have to make sure your child is meeting age expected progress. You don't need teaching qualifications. You hear that an awful lot about, well, how can you home ed if you're not a teacher? Or I get a lot of, well, why are you home educating if you're a teacher? Which is, I get the opposite. And the only one is a suitable education. And that is for you to decide. So picking up on, providing something for if your young person is neurodivergent and a suitable education for them, or if they have anxiety or special educational needs, or they, whatever it is, or school just isn't the right place for them, or you just feel like it suits your lifestyle to home educate, which is why we home educated at the beginning. The only thing is a suitable education. And I think it's very, very loose, and it's for you to decide, which is incredibly scary, but also very empowering. We don't have to replicate school at home, and that's a really, really big one. So the first steps in home educating. So obviously, as I've said before, you need to deregister. So if your child has already started school, you need to inform the school that you wish to deregister them. And then the second thing I would always suggest you do is you find your local home ed groups. So home ed groups exist all over the UK. The best way to find them is on Facebook. So if you type in home education and then the county or the area in which you live in, you will often then find those groups. And then once you're in those groups, you often find that there's WhatsApp groups and various subgroups. But I would honestly say that is the next most important thing to do, is to find local home ed groups, because they will help you know about activities and opportunities that go on. There'll be regular meetups, which will be a way of developing friendships, both for you and for your young person. And that could be, if your young person just likes very, low key things with just one other child, then you could obviously post in that group saying, anybody interested in a play date with my young person. Or if your young person likes really busy groups and, is really into science or something, you could look and see whether there's a big, busy science group. But I would always say, find your local home ed groups, find out what's going on, find out who's in your community with similar young people, to help you develop your support network and friendships for your young person, whatever that might look like. The other thing is to join online communities. So these are really great ways to share ideas and inspiration and different wisdoms. moments of pride and success, or moments of what on earth am I doing, because my children have been in their pajamas for the 4th day running, but definitely online communities. Obviously, we have one over at Twinkle, which I'll talk a little bit later, but there's lots of various online communities out there, and also connecting with various people and communities on things like Instagram as well gives you lots of ideas and inspiration when you're having a moment of maybe panic. The next big one is to connect with your child as a learner. So actually spend some time finding things that your young person is interested in, and also finding ways of how they like to learn. I think that often young people, when they're in school, they're never asked how they like to learn, and they're often never asked that question. So I've worked with sort of young people and said, well, how do you learn best? What, and it might be something like, well, I actually learn best by talking through things. So my eldest, that's exactly how he learns best. The best learning is actually what we would call a car conversation. We often think, because we're conditioned by society, that's because of school, that learning needs to look a specific way, and it doesn't. So try and take some time to connect with your learner. What are they interested in? Maybe it might be they're interested in something really specific, like dinosaur teeth, or it might be that they want to learn about space. It might be they want to learn about, I don't know, why sand is on the beach. But also to ask how they learn. How do they learn best? And then use that to create that kind of natural rhythm of the day. And that's the sort of next one that I would definitely say. And then put together some resources that might encourage sort of learning activities. So you could maybe, get a few bits of art and craft equipment, or maybe some online resources, or maybe some books, or some different resources. But what I would really honestly say is just a few things when you're starting off. There is that overwhelming urge to buy everything. So every book that you ever look at, every curriculum that somebody shared, any subscription that anybody says is good, any app that somebody mentions on a website has been really useful. And I would say don't, because I remember when we first started home educating, I bought every single workbook under the sun, and I had them all laid out in this on a bookshelf, it made me feel better. That's why I did it, and I bought loads of apps, and we just bought loads and loads of things. And I made the decision my children weren't going to school, so we did this. This was sort of reception year, all these beautiful paints and colouring pencils and all these beautiful workbooks. I have to be really, really honest. I mean, my eldest is about to come up to 12. He never, ever used any of them, ever. And they just sat on my shelf, because I learnt as he was growing, that he is not the type of child that sits and uses workbooklets. He just doesn't find them engaging, doesn't find them interesting, he doesn't find them exciting. And so they've literally just sat there completely pristine, and I'd spent hundreds of pounds on all this stuff, and we never ever used it. So number 5 is a caveat: don't buy all the stuff until you've done more of number 4, which is finding out how your child learns best, and then buy things that potentially might suit them. And if that is workbooklets, then great. So my daughter, who is coming along behind, she's 8, she actually quite likes a workbooklet. She likes being told, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then you can colour a bit in, then you can give yourself a little sticker. She likes that sort of thing, but it's definitely don't go and buy all the stuff. And so I would definitely, I don't know if Sam in the chat would say whether, I've never asked you, did you buy all the stuff when you started? Because I think your learners are very similar to my eldest. Definitely wouldn't use all the stuff. So let's just stop for the chat. I've stopped the urge to buy. I'm in the same boat at the moment. I agree, so many things are to help the parent feel better. Absolutely. I've home educated older children, but after Christmas, my 5-year-old refused to go back to school after he'd been bullied. I'm really sorry to hear that. And we're loving it. It makes so much more sense for him. Oak National Academy set up in lockdown is still alive and updated. Yeah, that has online lessons and resources which you might find useful. Thanks for that share. Sam's just said, of course she still buys it all. And your pen collection is amazing. Awesome. That does make me feel a little better. Now, what approaches are there to home ed? So the first thing to say is that if your child, particularly if your child has gone through a process of really disliking school, if they've been bullied, and I'm really sorry to hear that. I withdrew my son. I was saying to Kirsten this morning, I feel like my family's a bit like the hokey cokey. So my eldest decided to try school and then very much experienced bullying. He's neurodivergent and then came back out again and is just deciding whether he wants to try going back in or not. And so you do often need a process of that resetting. It's sometimes called deschooling. It's basically a period of relaxation and resetting immediately after deregistering. So it's about giving your young person time to decompress what they've been through. And that depends on how long they might have been in school. If they've never been to school, obviously you don't need to do this. If they've not been in school very long, then you wouldn't need to do this. Obviously, if they've been in school a long time, deschooling might be quite a long time. I've read something about a month for every year they've been in school. The first thing to say is never ever mention to the LEA the term deschooling because they dislike it. And they're nervous of it because it doesn't mean that you're doing nothing. You know, you could go and do some day trips, you can go and do some workshops, you can go and do some art, you can go to some museums, you know, but it's a bit more of a period of relaxation. And then start to think about what your approach to home ed is. And this is what's really great about home ed. You can do it however it works for you. I'm not going to go through every approach to home ed, but you might have some sort of structure or semi-structured learning. So you might have a timetable. You might have something to say, you know, in the mornings after breakfast, we're going to do reading for 10 minutes, or after morning snack, we are going to do a page of maths. It might, you know, not be every day, dependent on what you're doing. But you might have an actual timetable, like, you know, if that's what if your young person needs that, if your young person feels like they need a clear timetable to know what they're doing, you know, a visual timetable, and that's how they feel safe, then a structured learning approach might be for you, or semi-structured. So, you know, as I said, you know, bits of structure, but bits of things that are a little bit more looser. And obviously it also depends on what you're intending. If you're intending to put your child back into school and to sit exams in the near future, for example, then, you know, maybe moving to something a little bit more structured might be helpful for them. So that's one process. Another thing that's really, really popular is using nature studies. So looking at sort of self-directed or following a curriculum, which is kind of more in line with the seasons and the natural world. There's an amazing curriculum called Exploring Nature with Children, created by Jo Seddon, who is a good friend of Twinkle. And we've got lots of resources to go alongside that, but lots of people get loads and loads out of using nature studies. And then there's lots of other things, you know, unschooling. So that's if, you know, your child doesn't like an awful lot of direction and they don't like a lot of demands, then unschooling can be a really good way of approaching home ed. So where, you know, your child very much takes the leads, they're at the centre of learning. And, you know, they do things, you know, you develop things linked to their interests, things that are child-led or autonomous. So as I said, that can be a little, you know, unschooling is where children, you know, the children's interests are at the heart of everything you do. You could do a little bit of, you know, mix and match of you know, if you feel that maybe you want to be a bit semi-structured with English and maths, for example, and then What else you do can be child-led and autonomous. So, you could have a little bit of choice there as to how far you want to go down that process. But as I said, there is no right and wrong way, and there's lots of different approaches out there. And as I said, taking some time to think what would work for your learner is definitely is definitely something that's really worthwhile. I'm just going to stop for some questions. Do you think adults need to de-school? Yeah, I do. I very much do. So Sam's put if education experience may be positive or negative. Absolutely. Someone's saying that they really love ENWC and Exploring Nature with Children. Yeah, I love the fact you can reuse it every year. We have our Pathfinders live lessons as well that helps. I also think so. Samantha says we have a very loose daily rhythm. I'm not organised. Some days we do very little. My little ones don't like sitting still for long, but they love being in nature. Absolutely. And approaches definitely do adapt as life situations change. I mean, my 5-year-old, but my almost 12-year-old when he was 5 would never have sat and done anything. As he's got older, he has been more inclined to sit and be a bit more settled with doing more extended learning. That point of de-schooling for adults, absolutely. So I was a teacher for 18 years before I started home educating, and I feel very much that I've had to de-school. And I would say it's only when my eldest came back out of school after trying it, so he was home educated, then he tried school, then he came out again, that I really truly de-schooled, because I realised when he started school, we'd really been unschoolers. Actually, he was still, on par with all his peers anyway, even though we were unschoolers. But yeah, I definitely think we're very conditioned as a society that this is what education should look like, and I do definitely think there is a process of that. What happens if your child loses interest partway through a topic? Do you leave it or encourage them to finish it? Wow. I suppose it depends on what you think. I mean, I personally would leave it and then maybe come back to it and think about the positives of what they have learnt, and but also think about what it is that is making them not want to carry on. Is it the topic, or is it the way that you're kind of learning it together? So maybe that's something to think about. Can you still continue to do the topic, but in a different way? But yeah, approaches to home ed. So what I would like you to do, I should have said this at the beginning, but if you've got a piece of A4 paper, I thought that we could play a game about how we learn best. So it can just be a bit of rough paper. If it's red, all the better. But we're going to look at how we learn best. And I think this is really linked to this question of what happens if you're a young person, you're doing a project and they don't want to carry on with that project. So Sam said, leave it for your sanity. They may change their mind and return to it. So what we're going to think about is how you learn best. So hopefully, and Sam, I want you to do this too, and I'm going to check when I see you tomorrow that you've got it, because I'd like to see how well you've done. But can everybody grab just an A4 piece of paper? So what we're going to do is we are going to make a dragon bookmark for our books. But I am only going to read you the instructions. So you need an A4 piece of paper. You might want, as I said, a ruler or a piece, ruler or some scissors to help you maybe with a bit of a cut. But I tend to just fold and lick and rip, if that makes sense. So I just move on. Sometimes they come back to it. Other times it's something I thought was great and they didn't. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's often, you think, sometimes the best things we've done I've just made up on the spot. And some things that I thought the kids would love, they really didn't. I remember once we sat in the lounge and my kids asked, how tall was a polar bear? And they were probably, 6 and 3. And so we ended up getting a tape measure and finding out the height of loads of different animals. And in our stairwell, we put all the different heights of all the different animals. They were there for at least 2 years. And do you know what? The height of a polar bear on its back legs was just, I think it was like 3 meters. It was bonkers. And that was just something that just came out of nowhere. So yeah, lots of learning can just happen organically. Right, are we ready with our A4 paper? So our first instruction is fold the paper. If it's coloured red, great. If it's not, don't worry. Fold the paper to make a square, cut along the fold line to remove the excess paper. So fold the coloured paper to make a square, cut along the fold line to remove the excess paper. It is trusting that spontaneous stuff is best. Right, next point. Fold the paper square in half and cut neatly along the fold line, creating 2 rectangles. You will only need 1 paper rectangle to make the bookmark. Fold the paper square in half, cut neatly along the fold line, creating 2 rectangles. You will only need 1 paper rectangle to make a bookmark. This is where I lose you all. Honestly, if you get lost and you think, what is she doing? Please don't leave the webinar. It's a bit of fun for halfway through. Bring the 2 long edges of the paper rectangle together to fold the rectangle in half. Create a strong crease. Bring the 2 long edges of the paper rectangle together to fold the rectangle in half. Create a strong crease. Bring the 2 short edges of the rectangle together and create a strong crease. Bring the 2 short edges of the rectangle together and create a strong crease. Open the fold you made in step 4. Bring the long edge on the right-hand side of the paper rectangle up along the fold line and create a strong diagonal crease. Open out the fold you made in step 4. Bring the long edge on the right-hand side of the paper rectangle up along the fold line and create a strong diagonal crease. Repeat on the left-hand side of the paper rectangle. Turn the paper over, wrong side facing out, with the triangular point facing up. Fold a diagonal crease using the inside corners of the 2 sides along the bottom edge of the paper shape. So turn the paper over, wrong side facing out with the triangular point facing up. Fold a diagonal crease using the inside corners of these 2 sides along the bottom edge of the paper shape. And tell me if you've given up in the chat, because I've already seen 4 of you that are lost. Turn the paper over, right side facing out. Rotate the paper so the triangular point is in the top right-hand corner. Use scissors to cut off the end of the paper on the left-hand side to create the dragon's snout. So turn the paper over, right side facing out. Rotate the paper so the triangular point is the top right-hand corner. Use scissors to cut the end of the paper on the left-hand side to create the dragon's snout. Cut a triangle into the dragon's snout to create the mouth. Right, how many people This is what it should look like. This is what it should look like at the end. This is the mouth. When you have your book, what you do is you put it here. So you make some wings, and you make some wings, and you make some, put an eye on, and there is your dragon. So you should have the wings coming out and the little eye. You can make, you can do whatever. But that is the shape that you should have got. Now, how many of you actually kind of got there and did that? Oh dear, what's happening with my, there we go. So, to be honest, nobody, everybody seemed to have got lost. Someone copied the picture on the slide, which is a little bit cheaty. Did anyone actually manage it? So it doesn't seem like many of you actually did manage it. It sounds really, really complicated. And how often do we expect children and young people to sit in a class and follow a lesson? And back to our point, never ever be told, never be asked, how do you learn best? And actually, I'm tutoring a student, and I asked her, has anybody ever asked you, how do you learn best? And she said no, and she's 9. No one's ever asked me. I often sit in lessons, I'm completely lost, I've no idea what I'm doing, and I find school completely overwhelming. And that's the reason that she was being home educated, because she'd spent so much of her time being lost. Now, because you're home educated, you can ask your young people, how do you learn best? So if a project isn't working, say, right, what isn't working? You're a team. What isn't working? Is it the topic that you're a bit bored of, or is it what we're doing? So it might be, for example, that actually you need written instructions. So you need to physically see it written. It might be that you're a visual learner and you actually need to see the pictures. So it might be a little bit of both. So you might need written instructions. You might need picture instructions. You might actually feel that you're really not as good as you could be at something. You might actually be better if you had a template. So maybe you find writing, extended writing, we hear this all the time, I've got a reluctant writer, how do I help them? Or maybe if you've got something to start you off with, maybe that is a good template. Maybe if you had a video to follow, somebody to physically show you, that might have helped. Or somebody actually sat next to you saying, do this, now do this, now do this. Or maybe having a group or, so other people to work with. And I think that is something that we're really lucky with home ed, is that we can suit our learning around our learner. So the biggest sort of, I suppose, bit of advice is your suitable education can look how is best for your learner. And I definitely believe unschooling yourself is part of that. And that was a really good question earlier, because my eldest young person learns best through talking things through. And because we're not assessing them, remember, you don't have to assess them, you don't have to mark their work, you don't have to prove to an inspector that they've done what they've done. So why do you need to have them write lots of things down? If they would work better by dictating it or talking about it or drawing something, if they learn better by visuals or having templates or having keywords to start with, or whatever it is, then follow how your learner learns best, because we all learn in different ways. Some people learn much better working independently, in a solitary way. They're self-reliant, they like just working through things on their own. And, they just sort of, you say what you want and off they go. Lots of children, though, learn best through movement. And there's so much science out there that, for example, getting spellings to stick, you need to get kids to move, making words out of Play-Doh, tapping the letters on your arm. Things that you can make multi-sensory helps learning to stick. Children may or may not learn best as part of a group. So, can you make links with people and, take it in turns, and one of you do, some science with your young person and a couple of others. Lots of them might be visual. So I think sometimes if we watch videos or things like that, we give ourselves a hard time because it's too much screen time. But actually, if they're full on into, I don't know, animals, then, watching a David Attenborough is that's really good learning. For mine, it's horrible histories at the moment. And just talking, as I said, we have so much learning going on sat in the car with, just random questions that I get asked. Sound, rhythm, so you might have an auditory learner or a musical type learner. So when we were doing the parts of the bones in the body, we made a song. And do you know what? My kids can remember all the bones in the body like 5 years later because they still sing that song. And there wasn't a pencil in sight. Or most children will be a combination of all of these, so multi-sensory. And so definitely, that's one of the great bits of advice that hopefully I can give you is you don't have to replicate school at home, and there's lots and lots of different ways that you can learn. Now, another question is, will I be checked on by the LEA? Probably. That's probably likely. And if you do, then the best advice I could give you is all LEAs are different. And if you're part of a home ed group, then it would be a really good idea to ask them, what's the LEA like, and, sort of give you some support and advice. You do have to obviously engage with them if they ask you. But usually you don't have to have them come to your house. You don't have to have any meetings with them. You can just write a report. And the advice is always that you talk about what you have done, not what you will do. But, there's lots of help out there from your local community. But yes, it's likely you will be checked on. So lots and lots and lots of different advice and, wisdom from lots of different home edders. But I think some of these is don't feel the need to copy school, trust your instincts, accept that home ed will be that roller coaster, do what's best for your child, don't pressurise yourself, don't feel you need to be the teacher, so learn together. I often hear people say, oh, well, my child, gets cross with me because they think I'm being a teacher. Just learn together. We talk a lot about, I often talk at the end of my day about what I've learned that day, because I've learned so much since home educating my children of things I didn't know. So how can we help at Twinkl? So there's lots of ways that we can help at Twinkl to help start you off on your home ed journey. The first thing is that we have a dedicated YouTube channel, and there are lots and lots of videos on there that can help you when you're starting out. So if you go onto our home ed Twinkl site and it says new to home ed, start here, and there's lots of various videos to get you kind of started. And also, if you're looking for a style of something to do, so for example, lap books, there's lots of videos here of various things that you can do. And also, that's where lots of our live lessons, which I shall talk about in a moment, come from. So definitely check out our YouTube channel. The other thing is, if you're on Insta, go and join our Instagram channel. So we have, again, lots of, when we're talking about sharing ideas, so if you click up on here, it will take you to the stories. And we always share, Kirsty always shares lots of lovely things that different home educators are doing. So that gives you lots of different ideas. We have our dedicated Facebook page for Twinkl Home Educators. So do go and like that page, because that has lots of various things on it. So there's me talking. But there's lots of various things on here. So, for example, this tells you about our virtual Wonders of the World that is coming up. so you don't sort of miss out on the news of those things, of different things that are coming out. And also we do have Pinterest. We are over on Pinterest. So for example, if you're looking for something to sort of do, so for example, houses and homes, there's a variety of different topics and things that you can do over on Pinterest. And Sam is going to be sharing those over in our chat. The other thing to say is that we have our own specific blog, which is a really useful place to go. So Twinkl have lots and lots of blogs, but we have our own home ed blog. And so there are lots and lots of various blogs that you can use. So you can look at, so there's various things from kind of this one here, like what are wilderness skills? If I just pick a page at random, I don't know, 7 conquer activities for home educators, unlocking vocabulary power for home educators, top resources for reluctant writers. So that's a really, really good resource, for when you're sitting down with your cup of tea and you're thinking of what on earth could I do, go and check out those blogs, because they are really, really great. We also have our dedicated Facebook groups. So we have our main Facebook group, which is really, really good for you, kind of, if you want to ask any sorts of questions. And the second thing to say is that we have our dedicated secondary Facebook group. So I know that somebody was saying that they have a secondary learner there. That they weren't sure how to support. So that's definitely something else to go and look at. And then the last thing to say is that we have a weekly email. So do make sure that you are signed up to our weekly email. It's a really good way of showing all the things that we have coming up. So I think, so this was this week's. So it's written by the team every week. And it has all of the different activities and various things that are going on. And so it's really, really useful to sort of find out what's going on so that you don't miss things. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing is you need to make sure that when you've signed into Twinkl that you have set your career type as a home educator. And then if you go to contact preferences, then you will be able to sign up, as you can see here, to your free weekly newsletter. And you can even set when you wish your newsletter to arrive. So mine arrives on Sunday at 8 o'clock. But if you sit down on a Sunday at 10:30, you can make sure that it arrives at 10:30. The other thing to say is we have a dedicated section of the website. If you set your career type as home ed, you will see that at the top. But it's right at the top of the Twinkl website. So up here, you can see it's here, home education. So if you click on that, then again, that has all of the various bits that you might need. So that's a good place to start. If you feel that this is very, very overwhelming, head to the home ed section of the website. And what now? So what can you do now? Well, I would suggest that if you're starting off this week, we have loads of free different taster packs. So if you kind of like the idea of doing some nature studies, or you like the idea of maybe having a go at some unschooling or some game schooling, which is really, really popular, we have all of these different packs that are free to download. And if you're just looking for something specific for a specific age group, then we have taster packs from 0 to 5, 7 to 9, 9 to 11, and 11 plus. So again, you can download these for free if you don't yet have a subscription for Twinkl, and then you can use those as to sort of start you off for not back to school week. And then obviously, if you feel like you're not signed up to Twinkl yet and you would like a subscription, then you can go onto the website and look at the different packages. If you're not sure whether you want Ultimate, Extra or Core, then do pop a message onto our Facebook group and ask people, what they use. I like Ultimate because it just gives you full access to everything, and it means you get some books from Book Club, which is another good thing. And if you're still not sure, obviously we give you 30 days of unlimited downloads for free. So if you haven't already signed up to Twinkle, then that offer is there as well. So that's the end of our first webinar. Obviously, I've mentioned things like Book Club and various things. And so on Wednesday, I will be doing another webinar on all of the, how to get the most out of your Twinkle subscription. So this was very much about a kind of starting off webinar, but Wednesday I will be back at 8 o'clock to talk to you about how to make the most out of Twinkle without kind of overwhelming you. The books from Book Club are an opt-in. So again, if you have Twinkle Ultimate, you can opt into the Book Club, and that is in the preferences section of the website. Then they get sent to you at home. You can opt for what age group you want. But yeah, any questions? I'm here, Sam's here, and if not, then I will let you get off onto to have the rest of your evening. Yeah, definitely. If you're on the Ultimate, definitely go and sign up to Book Club. Twinkle Originals are one of my favourite bits of Twinkle. The books are fantastic, and my kids love them. So yeah, join me on Wednesday at 8 o'clock for making the most of your Twinkle subscription. So hopefully that was helpful. That's really lovely. I'd be lost without Twinkle. Thanks, Emma. Lovely to see you. Even though you probably could give me some advice because you're a very seasoned home edder, but hopefully that was useful. Thank you very, very much. Thank you also to Sam in the chat for providing all those lovely links. So if those links will be here. So, you can look at them and click on them at your leisure. I'm going to be checking on Sam's lovely origami tomorrow. So I'll hold you to that. And no cheating, no going on the website and reading the instructions. And as I said, I will see some of you, I hope, on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And I'll see you soon.